You know, it's been a long day, or somebody had way too much to drink when Danny Cannell is calling out the SEC for being upset that North Carolina is in the dance. When really, you must be thinking that somehow, some way, we added West Virginia recently. Welcome on into the overtime drive. No Dave Shumate today, just me, Cole Thompson, coming at you live March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you who celebrate. Real quickly, if you haven't already, make sure that you turn on your green and have an ice green beverage. Don't worry, this is just water. I know we got more college football coming your way. We actually now have spring intel. There are going to be more fun shows. So we're going to go talk a lot about this sport. But real quickly, if you haven't already, like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel. That way you keep up to date with everything that we're doing over here. Live shows, instant reactions. We got the college NCAA tournament underway. March Madness is here. You're not going to want to miss out on it. So make sure you hit that ring notification. That way you're locked into every show. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, link in the description. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. And as always, this show is fueled by FANDUEL. Visit FANDUEL.com. Now is the perfect time to join because, of course, the NCAA tournament is underway. And sign up, FANDUEL.com/SECU, $200 with your first $5 bet. If you win that bet, you win $200 in bonus bets. So sign up today at FanDuel.com/SECU. I know that we have a lot of things going on in the world of sports, but this is a jam-packed, quick show. Deion Sanders actually said something that was really promising that I want to get into. What are the sleeping games that we need to talk more about in the world of college football, especially in the SEC, that could have massive implications on the college football playoff? Missouri. We have to have a serious conversation because lo and behold, here we are once again disrespecting the Tigers. And I'm here to defend the honor of Tennessee. And I mean all of Tennessee. Tennessee basketball, Tennessee baseball, Tennessee football. But Deion Sanders is actually making some sense. Now, a lot of times we think, oh, well, Deion's just kind of going about his own way. He's talking out of both sides of the mouth. And sometimes he does. But the one thing that I will say that I can appreciate from this new NFL model that people are trying to sell is that the implications that the spring matters. The spring transfer portal window matters. Of course, we can also say that the spring practices matter, but a lot of people are tuning out for the spring game. We've already heard Alabama is going to change up the spring game down in Tuscaloosa for 8A. We've already heard that Missouri is getting rid of their spring game this year. Texas is getting rid of their spring game this year. We haven't seen a legit spring game out in Oxford, Mississippi for a while. But Deion, who says in the NFL model, wants to change some things up. And he wants to have a spring game against another team. Here's the actual quote. I would actually like to play a spring game against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do. I would like to do it as a style as is in the pros. I would like to go against somebody in practice for a few days, and then you have your spring game. I think the public would be satisfied with that tremendously. I think it's a tremendous idea. I've told other personnel who understand that, and they believe it's a tremendous idea. Now, if we are going to talk about this being a matchup where you host a team for a little while, just like you see in NFL style, where there'll be a practice for 2 or 3 days, then they'll play a spring training game, or what is a preseason game, I could see that working. I could also see as long as you schedule a home-and-home schedule. So you heard Fran Brown come out and say, hey, we'll fly our team from Syracuse, New York, out to Boulder, Colorado. You host us up for 3 days, we can make that work. Now, I'm all for that because who would not love to see two teams that maybe are going to take that next step forward this year and actually put pedal to the metal, see where the faults are with their roster, then go to their GMs, then go to their scouting staff and say, here's what we need to target in the transfer portal. Here's what we need to target in the recruiting trail for us to be better this time next year. We need to guarantee ourselves one more win after looking at how we played against another team that's at our level. Very fair, that's at our level. Now, that may not work in the SEC because a lot of SEC teams don't want to go ahead and show off talent. They don't want to go ahead and put players out there. And a lot of coaches also, they're not for the idea. But we have heard others around the world, especially in college football, talk about this subject, which I completely agree with. Why not call up an FCS school? Just knock on the door. Yoo-hoo. You want to go to spring practice? Come on up on a Saturday. We'll pay you a couple of $100,000. You go ahead and get some reps in. We go ahead and get some reps in for our backups. That way we know who is going to actually be ready to go week 1. And they say, well, we could definitely do that. And that is the way that you guarantee that you still are going to have a spring. It's a way to guarantee you still figure out who is left on your roster. It guarantees that you put yourself in a great position to know what you need to attack in the transfer portal, and it's not going to hurt you. And I've already made the list. Every single school can play an FCS team in 2025 if they wanted to. And then what you do is now you get rid of that FCS game late November and you schedule a group of 5 program like a Georgia State or potentially a Texas State, or you could throw in a Southern Miss, and that take the place of the FCS game, to where people who are complaining about the SEC playing weaker competition later on in the year, they lose that argument. No more FCS schools. Alabama in spring, they play Stanford. They just come on up from Birmingham. How about Arkansas? They go play Central Arkansas. That just makes a trip on up 2.5 hours from Conway. Auburn, they play Alabama State. The Hornets go on travel on in from Montgomery. Florida, they're going to play against a team that most people don't know in the world of college football, which I found out was only about an hour and 40 minutes away. Stetson, they come on in. They could deliver the spring game. Georgia, they welcome in Mercer from Macon. Kentucky, they welcome in Morehead State. LSU, they have a slew of teams they can pick from, but I went with Southeastern Louisiana. The Lions roar their way into Baton Rouge. Lions, Tigers, I just need a barrel of mine, right? Mississippi State, they welcome in Mississippi Valley State. Missouri, they welcome in Missouri State. Ole Miss, they welcome in Jackson State. So Deion Sanders gets his wish, though it doesn't come from his school currently. Oklahoma, this will be an interesting one. We'll get back to that in a minute. South Carolina, they play Furman coming in from Greensville, South Carolina. Tennessee, they play East Tennessee from Johnson City. Texas A&M. Prairie View A&M is only about an hour drive away. I actually live probably less than 45 minutes away from Prairie View. So why not just go ahead and make that trip, and instead of playing them in week 13 or in week 2, that just becomes an annual tradition. Texas, they welcome in a team from San Antonio, an Incarnate Word, and that's a team that every single year seems to be somewhat of a player in the FCS playoffs, so they get to feel really good about themselves. And then Vanderbilt, they welcome in Austin Peay. Now, I did say, let's talk about Oklahoma, because Oklahoma doesn't have an FCS school in there. But Tarleton State, which is in Stephenville, Texas, is only about a 3-hour drive. So they go ahead and they say, we'll pay you a little bit of extra money. Joe Castiglione kind of cash out a little bit more of a check. He goes ahead and signs on the dotted line, and guess what? Maybe in the process, they find themselves a wide receiver or a cornerback or a defensive back that they really like. And the best part about this is what you do is you guarantee that you get an extra game involved. Fans still appreciate this. There still is joy coming into the stadium. You still are making a profit. Maybe not as big as a profit as you were initially expecting, but still a profit none the least. You also tell your players, hey, here's the bottom line. If you're going to transfer, you got to sit this game out. You don't get to put tape on film to then boost up your NIL package. You're either locked on in throughout the entire offseason with us, you get to go through practice and you get to show that to people, or you go ahead and you can be committed to our team for 2025, for 2026, for 2028, or however long you want to go with. It gives you a game. It gives you a profit. It saves spring football. It makes it worth the while, because if at least now teams are interested. And lo and behold, nobody walks away a loser, because I guarantee you're not going to play most of your starters, the guys that you want to see play week 1 against Florida State or week 1 against Virginia Tech. You're playing the guys you're trying to figure out what's their role going to be for us next season. Will they be a plug and play addition to where they're part of the second team unit or a part of the third team unit, or maybe they're going to be a stopgap player for us. Let's figure out what they provide. And as I already said, you tell the people who are transferring, those who are not going to be long-term invested into this program, they can go ahead and say goodbye. All good. No problem whatsoever. It saves spring. It gives you an opportunity to check out the rest of your lineup. And best of all, you are bringing in a profit. And then, of course, you can go ahead and cancel that game late November, week 13, week 15, 14, whatever it is, to that way put in another game that's only going to strengthen your schedule and allow you to guarantee that you have more teams welcoming into the college football playoff in the SEC. I'm just saying, it's one idea that I really do like from Deion Sanders, which, lo and behold, never thought I'd say those words coming out of my mouth. As always, this show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel not only is the #1 app, but it's also bracket season, and FanDuel is letting you make the call, because right now, new customers, they can get $200 in bonus bets when they win their first $5 bet. So you get $200 in bonus bets by any clutch shot, last-second heartbreak, or figuring out who's cutting down the nets. And if you've been waiting to join, now is the time. $200 in bonus bets. There's tournament action almost every single day. And FanDuel has amazing spreads, totals, and game props for you to bet on. Some of my favorites in the early round. How about San Diego State at +4.5 over North Carolina? Mount St. Mary's -2.5 as the American -2.5 over Mount St. Mary's. Xavier -2.5 over Texas feels like a really intriguing line. High Point at +8.5 is one that I am absolutely hammering. McNeese +7.5 against Clemson is one that I really also like. And Georgia +5.5 over Gonzaga. So all these lines and so much more, all you got to do is just go visit FanDuel.com/SECU and get into college hoops action today. Disclaimer: must be 21 and present in select states and 18 plus in DC. First real line wager money only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus issued with non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel, sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under the agreement of the Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit cccpg.chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Always here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, let's go ahead and have a sip of water. Hopefully you dyed yours green like I did. Now I don't have a green tongue to shed. That's a good thing. College football playoff sleeper games. So we know this right now at the SEC. You get 10 wins. Them and in the Big Ten. You're guaranteed a college football playoff berth. We saw it last season with Tennessee. If Alabama would have won a game against Oklahoma or Vanderbilt, they would have been in. The same thing for Florida. The same thing for Ole Miss. Same thing for South Carolina. So which games could have massive implications for the world of the college football playoff? I'll tell you the first one that I'm looking at just off the bat. It's easily got to be Ole Miss and LSU in week 5. Think about this for a second. LSU is going to have its best roster underneath Brian Kelly for my liking when it comes to completeness. Now, offensively, we already know what that offense was in 2023. That was a team that was good enough to win a national championship. Their defense kept them out of the college football playoff altogether. But as a cohesive unit, the names that were added in on the defensive side of the football, like Tamarcus Cooley at defensive back, or Patrick Payton coming on in as a new pass rusher, Jack Pyburn coming on in from Florida, another year with Blake Baker in the system. You're getting back here on Perkins. At some point, you're going to see the Honky Badger do business. And then, of course, the offense is still going to be one of the more complete units, headlined by Nussbus, 4,000-yard passer Nussbus, who somehow is still disrespected. They got the game against Clemson week 1, but I look at that week 5 matchup because the last thing you can afford to do is lose that game to a really under-the-radar Ole Miss roster, who, again, they're not going to have a bye at that point, and then potentially start off the year with 2 losses before you even get to your bye week, before you even get to playing against the juggernauts, against the Alabamas, against the Texas A&Ms, against the, how about you throw in an Alabama? How about you throw in an Oklahoma late in the year and you got to go travel on the road? So the last thing you can afford to do is have 2 losses to where it is win out, guaranteeing your spot in either Atlanta or at least in the college football playoff run. So that's a game that I'm looking at. I think another game that you have to look at, what about Texas A&M and what about Texas versus Florida in week 6? Both these teams are going to be coming off of bye. Here's the interesting thing, and I heard someone talk about this not too long ago. DJ Lagway not practicing right now. They said that they're getting a second opinion on his arm. Now, what exactly does that mean? Probably saying, hey, we don't know what his status is going to be going into the summer. We don't know if he needs surgery. We don't know when he's going to actually be good to go. So we're not going to assume anything. That would just be wrong and a shame if anybody does that. But what they're saying is that at some point, we will have an answer on DJ Lagway. What if that's the game that he comes back? What if he misses the very beginning of the year and they lose to LSU and then they lose to Miami and then they get off the bye week? And it's like, this is where we got to put pedal to the metal. What if everybody else is already caught up offensively too? 4 starters on the offensive line. Jaden Baugh is going to be a really good running back this year that can absolutely, I think, win the SEC rushing title. 5 or 6 good wide receivers, solid tight end play. I think the defense is going to be really good and underrated. So let's say everybody is caught up to speed, and then you get DJ Lagway back. And for Texas, their schedule is pretty manageable, in my opinion. The game on the road in Athens is going to be a bloodbath. I always got to throw out Red River because I don't know what to expect in that game. Sometimes the better team doesn't win, and you're going to have Arch Manning. And that may be one of Arch's first real tests on the road in the swamp as potentially a favorite, living up to expectations. And if this Florida team is actually as advertised, what if they get that win? And what if you're Texas and now you're sitting there and saying, well, we can lose Red River, we can lose Georgia, but we can't lose both, because then that would put us at 9-3. People want to go ahead and say that, yes, Texas is built to win the SEC, and they are, because they have Steve Sarkisian. They have a great recruiting class. They also have really good depth, and that was a big-time reason why they were able to make the jump to the SEC. But I'm not ready to go ahead and crown them the favorites to win the conference. You still have Georgia. You still have LSU. Alabama, I think, is going to be better this season. I don't know what to expect from South Carolina or Texas A&M or maybe even Ole Miss for that matter. But I'll tell you what, if those teams start getting hot at the right time, I wouldn't sleep on them. Same thing for Tennessee. So I'm not ready to go ahead and Texas guarantees puts itself in the college football playoff. But with a win in this game, you feel a lot better if you're Steve Sarkisian before you got to go travel to Dallas to take on Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. Week 9, Texas A&M versus LSU. Remember that game? Marcel Reed comes in at halftime, balls on out on the ground, has like over 150 rushing yards, and the entire dynamics change at Kyle Field. Like, you feel like this is the moment where, okay, A&M, they're starting to look like A&M of old. Hold up. Now we get to see what happens with number 10 in there. And that was the moment where Connor Wigman realized, I'm probably transferring to the Big 12. Not meant for the SEC at this point. Well, now it's revenge. And Brian Kelly does not lose. Let me rephrase that, because that's very disrespectful. A&M does not win in Tiger Stadium. They do not go to Death Valley, win a night game, and I can promise you that will be a night game because it usually is, and lose to the Tigers. They do not do that, win against the Tigers. They don't do that. And I think that you are going to see a better offense this year. 4 starters on the offensive line return for Texas A&M, which enough people are not talking about. That may be a selling point for me on why A&M hits the win total. If you want to go check out that win total, you can just go look currently on FanDuel. I think it's at 7.5. But they also have a good run game. What is Marcel Reed going to be at this point? Because I already told you, Marcel Reed was awesome on the ground. He made people miss. He was juking and jiving and making plays left and right. People were not able to go ahead and keep up with him. But now LSU has better front seven. LSU's got a better defense. They got a DJ Pritchett at cornerback, the 5-star, who looks like a day one starter. And I can tell you what, talking to people around the program, they believe that he is going to be turning heads by the end of the month. And that's going to be a big-time deal for the Tigers secondary. So you're going to have to throw. A&M's one of these teams that I see a lot of people, and we do this way too often with them, which we have to stop doing, that feels like they're trending upward. Like, everyone overrates them in the offseason. They say they're a team that's going to be really, really well put together, a team that's going to make that next jump. And they always have the right piece in the transfer portal. Love the addition of Mario Craver. Mike Hudson comes back fully healthy. He's a really solid wide receiver. I've watched him play in person. Casey Concepcion, for my money, one of the best route running playmakers in the SEC, and he's yet to play a game in the SEC. But you live and break by your quarterback. I know what I'm getting in Garrett Nussmeier. I'll take the 12 interceptions if I'm getting 35 touchdowns, a passer rating of over 135, a completion percentage of around 68%, and he's leading my team to multiple top 25 victories. I'll take that 10 times out of 10. I don't know what I'm getting Marcel Reed just yet. I don't know if A&M knows what they're getting in Marcel Reed. Is it the one that they saw last year against LSU? Really good on the ground, completed 2 pass attempts? Or is it the one they're going to see that they got against USC out in Las Vegas, where his mobility was the X factor for that win, but they really also put a lot of emphasis on his passing attack. How about South Carolina, Alabama, week 9? The reason why I love this game is because of Alabama last year had an opportunity to put belt to ass against the Gamecocks. Gamecocks at this point, we didn't know really what they were. But in my opinion, that loss was the moment that Shane Beamer kind of turned a switch and everybody inside that locker room. You talk to people around South Carolina like I have, they actually believe they should have won that game. They believe that if they didn't have a couple of things go wrong early on in the third quarter, they would have marched their way and gotten a signature victory on the road in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and they would have gone to the college football playoff. There's a lot of people who believe that. They definitely believe that that was the moment where everything changed. That was the identity to where, okay, We know that we can hang with the best. Now it's time to prove it. Well, you prove it by playing against an Alabama team in your backyard. Lenore Sellers at this point is going to have over 20 starts underneath his belt. More importantly, he is going to potentially have 1 or 2 losses on his schedule. That's a big time deal. You look at who they play leading up to that October 25th game. You don't know what to expect from South Carolina. They could be undefeated. They could be a 1-loss team. They could be a 2-loss team. But you don't want to lose to the Alabama Crimson Tide. That way it changes the entire trajectory for what you're going to have for the playoff. So how do you respond? How do you make sure that when people walk into Williams-Brice Stadium, the most electric atmosphere in college football, for my opinion, that they are going to deliver a performance to remember? That every single one of these wide receivers, they're kicking ass. Nick Harbor, he's not running track this year. He's fully focused in on football. What happens when he has that big-time game? Maceo Bennett came up with a huge touchdown in the fourth quarter that allowed that comeback to come on in, to even be thought about in fruition. What if that becomes the new norm? How do you build that rapport? What if the run game is stable enough to where you can trust a Rasul Faison to be able to break on through to the second and third level of the defense? And this is an Alabama defense that maybe is going to have some weak points at the second level. Can you go ahead and attack that part? Can you go ahead and attack what is with Lenore Sellers on the ground? And in my opinion, if you want to be able to claim that you are one of the best teams in college football, you want to claim that you're one of the top dogs to look out for moving forward, you got to win against some of the top dogs. And for Alabama at this point, it's the same thing. I know what to expect from the identity underneath Shane Beamer. You're going to have a no-nonsense, all-out, pedal-to-the-metal team that wants to win, and they will win it their way. That is the way that the Gamecocks play at Willie B for Shane Beamer. What am I going to see from the culture and the identity from Kalen DeBoer squad? Because remember, this was a team that just 2 years ago, with him at the helm, with Ryan Grubb as his right-hand man, went to a national championship, didn't lose the game, had a quarterback that they had such high hopes on, and nearly was a Heisman Trophy winner. 2 1,000-yard receivers and a stable run game and a pretty good offensive line. So do we see that version of Alabama year 2? Year 1 is about establishing identity. Year 2 is about building a culture. Do we see that culture with a quarterback, Ty Simpson, Keelan Russell, Austin Mack, march on in my opinion, the most hostile, underrated environment in college football and guarantee themselves a win? How about Texas A&M versus Missouri? We're going to talk more about Missouri in a minute, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But what if, again, A&M, they have a really hot offense. They feel really good about the direction of their defense, with the pieces that they've replaced, and now they got to go march into Columbia. And honestly, nobody knows what Missouri is going to be. Nobody. I don't. You don't. Really? I don't even think that Eli Drinkwitz, if you told Eli Drinkwitz, sat him down, looked him dead in the eye, and he had to make sure that he was telling the truth or a sniper was going to go ahead and blow his brains out, what do you think of Missouri? I guarantee you he would not know what Missouri is, at least at this point. But what if we get the version of Missouri, top 25 defense? Ahmad Hardy comes on in from Louisiana Monroe. He's already a leading rusher in the SEC. He's leading in yards after contact. What if Bo Pabula is as advertised? And the version that we saw at strike that, reverse it, in spurts in Happy Valley, that becomes the new norm for Kirby Moore in this offense. What if Kevin Coleman lives up to expectations? And now that game that many of us thought, well, maybe that's one that you get to look at if you're Missouri. And you win that game at Memorial Stadium. What if now you do? Their schedule, with how they're playing, with their road games, who they're welcoming into Faurot Field, it's manageable. It's absolutely not out of the radar to think, yes, Missouri can be in that race. I think the Iron Bowl has massive playoff implications. I really do. Alabama at this point, they know what it's like to go into Jordan-Hare Stadium, and they know what those games are all about. It never goes easy. If you ever want to know anything about an Iron Bowl, here's what I will tell you. It always seems to go in favor of the Crimson Tide when it's not Cam Newton on the field and they're playing at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Don't touch the game with a 25-foot pole that would give you the easiest bet of all time, even if it was the Iron Bowl, if it's being played at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Because the voodoo magic that appears there, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain a 4-overtime game against a Brian Harsin-led team. I don't know how to explain to kids, hey, 4th and 31 is a legit thing that happened. And Isaiah Bond toe-tapped at the back of the end zone to save Alabama's season and give Nick Saban one more win in the Iron Bowl for the last time. I don't know how to explain Bo Nix looking awful 2 weeks before against Mississippi State and then balling on out against Alabama. The Jarrett Stidham game, the kick six. I don't know how to explain it. But Alabama at that point, they will have played everybody on their schedule. They would have welcomed in Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, he's still there. Baba Yaga ain't going away quietly, and he wants to go march on into Bryant-Denny Stadium and put belt to ass one more time. Oklahoma, what's their offense going to look like with Shumate and Ben Arbuckle? They also got to play against Florida State early on in the season. They got to go play against LSU. What's that game going to be like? So you may have 2 losses on the schedule once again if you're Alabama, and you have to win that game. And if you're Auburn, that might be a game that either Hugh Freeze is coaching for a contract extension or coaching to keep his job. That's what we're talking about when it comes to the value of the Iron Bowl. And I'm not saying that maybe Auburn may well be this year's South Carolina, where they didn't have high hopes for them, didn't know what to expect from them, and now they're trying to go ahead and put themselves in a prime position to be one of the best teams and the most slept-on teams in the world of the college football playoff run. Florida versus Tennessee. That is one that I am very intrigued with. And again, I'm going to talk about Tennessee not too long, so I don't want to go into too much detail with them. But Florida versus Tennessee. What if Florida is better than advertised? That means that they're going to be a 9-10 win team. And I'm telling you, with their schedule, 8-4, that is most teams 10-2. That is most teams even 11-1. They have a murderer's row because you don't know what you're going to get from a team in Florida State. You have no idea what you're getting in Miami right now. You still have to play against Tennessee and Texas A&M on the road, I may add in, and LSU on the road, I may add in. And let's just say that they're even better than expected, and they have 2 losses. Well, that's a game where maybe if DJ Lagway is caught up to speed and the offense is absolutely humming at the right time, they just go ham against them. They just find a way to do it. And the other thing that's really important here, think about the swamp. Think about the environment, especially with this Florida roster, with this Billy Napier-led team. What's so interesting to me, Josh Heupel has trouble playing on the road down in Gainesville, Florida. Remember, what was it, week 3 or week 4 in 2022? And everyone was like sitting there saying, okay, well, Florida, not really that good of a team. Tennessee, Joe Milton, they may be able to build off their success. And it wasn't even close. And then we got the fight on the field with 25 seconds left. What did that say? I think you look again, if you're Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava taking that next step forward. How do you feel about him? What about the run game? How do you feel about Star Thomas and Peyton Lewis? How do you feel about, Peyton Lewis? How do you feel about Deshaun Bishop? How do you feel about the offensive line? What if the defense does take a step back, but instead you're able to run the football and you're not giving up as many sacks and Nico's not running like a chicken with his head cut off? That may have massive playoff implications. Week 13, what does that do? It's the last conference game for Florida. So it's their last shot to be able to improve before they take on Florida State. And for for Tennessee, you just don't want to go ahead and march on into playing at Neyland and say, oh, well, this is a game that we just cannot afford. It doesn't matter. Waving the white flag when we play against Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, go ahead, have your way with us. Just a few games I want to throw out there. I think they're all definitely going to be in play and should be in play for that meeting. We have over 500 people watching right now. Make sure you like the video, hit the ring notification, and subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. We do live streams. We do daily content. We got the tournament coming on up, so you don't want to miss that. Dave and Chris are going to be going live almost every single night. Don't turn away from that. I'm going to defend Tennessee real quickly because of how dare Chris Phillips and Dave Shumate not treat the volunteer country with the pride that it deserves. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud that nobody wants to hear, and I don't really care. But Tennessee fans, when I come visit you in Neyland, you remember Cole Thompson, first person to give you credit on this. Tennessee is the most complete program in the SEC right now. They are top to bottom. They are the most complete program in the SEC. Now, that does not mean that they are guaranteed to win national titles in baseball, and basketball, and football every single season. But if you tell me that Rick Barnes, Tony Vitello, and Josh Heupel are guaranteed to get you a, 70% win rate every single year, they would guarantee you in baseball, at least the Supers being hosted in Knoxville, a top 4 seed in basketball, and a 9-win season in the NBA in college football. I would say that that's the only team that right now I can guarantee will get that job done. And it's because of the culture that they've been building underneath Danny White. what they have accomplished over the last few years, most schools only dream of happening in one sport. Basketball, every single year with Rick Barnes there, they feel like a team that guarantees itself at least a second weekend in the tournament, guarantees themselves a top 4 seed in the SEC, and they're built that way. You watch the way that they played against Auburn, that is a top 10 team in basketball right now, anywhere. I'll tell you what, the way they were able to close out the year, I know they didn't get the win against Florida, but you tell me that I'm getting that type of play, that consistency on the court, that ability to be able to score down low, that's a team that I don't want to face in any single region. They're the number 2 seed. In my opinion, they're walking out of that region and they're going to San Antonio right now. Rick Barnes can almost guarantee and smell the confetti as he's cutting down the nets in the supers. The Elite 8. Tony Vitello, what they're doing in baseball. Again, still one of the best teams in the sport. They're fresh off of winning a national championship. They lose multiple pieces to the MLB draft. They have to replace multiple pitchers as well, which was a big-time deal in my opinion. And yet here we are talking about Tennessee. For my money, still one of the most complete teams. Now, I understand that I believed that Florida was going to beat them, but you know what? So be it. I was wrong. Can't say I lied here. Tennessee, with what they have currently on the baseball diamond, they're built to be a dynasty. They are built to be what Alabama was underneath Nick Saban. And kind of like how we've talked about with other coaches before, they got a guy that's locked on in. I don't know if you get better than Tennessee if you are Tony Vitello. A&M can offer you a bucket load of money. Guess what? Tennessee will match it. Texas, if Jim Schlossnagle goes out of a job or goes to the MLB because of, God forbid, he blows off another team, I don't know if you would take that job down in Austin. You're content where you are. You're constantly winning. You're constantly putting yourself as a top 3 seed in baseball. And more importantly, you are guaranteeing yourself a super regional and a shot at Omaha every single year. Tennessee baseball, for my money, the most complete in college baseball year in and year out, and should still be that way for as long as Tony Vitello is there. And then we got Josh Heupel. Heupel hasn't won the big one yet. Heupel's road resume is still a little bit concerning. But when I look at Tennessee overall, they're set at the most important position for the next 5 years. Quarterback. I don't know what's going to happen with Nico. Nico may ball out this year, win the Heisman Trophy, be guaranteed to be a number 1 or top 3 pick, and now you got to start fresh at the QB spot. You got 4 dudes lined on up. Oh, and by the way, that's not including the 4 guys that you're determining between who are 4 stars, if not better, that are going to come in your 2026 recruiting class. So you already are winning when it comes to the most essential spot. I think the offense is going to spruce itself up a little bit more this offseason. So we're going to see a revamped and the scary version that was scoring 40 a game next season. Schedule's manageable right now. They can capitalize on that. If you told me that next season Tennessee's back in the college football playoff despite not having a great running back or an unknown running back, I wouldn't doubt you. In fact, for my money right now, I thought that next season would be the year that Tennessee made the playoff. Their year ahead of schedule for me. I think Mike Matthews is going to turn into Jalen Hyatt 2.0. I think you're going to see Braylon Staley take another step forward. David Sanders Jr. being on campus, working with this offensive line. I think that does wonders. Oh, and by the way, their recruiting has gone up every single year because Danny White's putting his money where his mouth is. And I'm not saying that there are not other teams around the SEC that can meet the standard of what Tennessee is doing on the court, on the diamond, on the football field. Every single one of them are really good. But there is a fault for each one of the teams. Texas, I think, is close. Texas, I want to see more in basketball. Can they go on some run against Xavier this weekend and then be able to punch their ticket to the second weekend? Maybe so. I think baseball with Jim Schlossnagle is going to be good, and then we know what football is. Texas A&M, football is my weak point. Basketball, they're a top 4 seed every single year. Baseball, I still think that they will get back to the pedigree. I don't know what's going to happen with the Michael Early situation, but I'll tell you what, A&M is not going to be down long in baseball. They know what they have at their helm and how much money they're willing to spend. But I got questions at football. Florida, I still have questions at football. Basketball, they can win a national championship and it won't shock anybody. Baseball, they can win a national championship and it won't shock anybody. Football, is it the scheduling or is it the coaching? And we've kind of had this problem with football for a while now. There was the 2 good years underneath Dan Mullen. But besides that, really, when you look at the longevity with Will Muschamp, with Jim McElwain, with anybody, you haven't really had that consistent force since Urban was there. And that was back in the 2000s. LSU, football and baseball, I believe they're elite. Basketball, I don't know what to make of it. The Will Wade situation is really souring because I think that honestly LSU basketball would have been at its peak if Will Wade was still there. You look at you look at Alabama. Alabama's getting close. If Kalen DeBoer can build that identity, build that program up the way that I think he can, you already got it in basketball with Nate Oates. You definitely got it in baseball right now. LeBron is killing it on the diamond. He's going to be a first-round pick for my money. They're probably close, but I still have questions. I don't have any questions about the football team underneath the direction of Josh Heupel. I don't have any questions about basketball underneath the direction of Rick Barnes. I have no question about baseball underneath Tony Vitello. That, to me, is the most complete program in the SEC right now. And so for Dave, Chris, how dare they disrespect you? How dare they? Tennessee fans, just remember, I am always here for you. I believe that you are a great team. I believe that you are the best program in the sport. And whenever I come visit you in Knoxville, just make sure that a couple of beers are on you. And you go ahead and make sure that I'm okay with not wearing the orange. But still, I'll say Rocky Top, you'll always be home sweet home to me. I will. And I will always pick my battles when choosing for you guys. Make sure you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the college football. By the way, Monty is bringing this up as well. Not to mention Lady Balls. Absolutely. When you look at the summit and what they're doing there, the Lady Balls deserve a lot of consideration too. But remember, volunteer fans, I'm on your side 10 times out of 10. As I said, over 600 people watching right now. Like the like the content. Make sure that you're also following us on the socials, and make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on anything that we're doing here on the channel over the next several days. Let's close on this, and then we're going to get on out of here. I got things to do. I also want to celebrate with my wife. I am Irish as all hell, and I do enjoy a good glass of beer on St. Patrick's Day. We have got to start paying more attention to Missouri. I know. It's Missouri. What are you talking about, Cole? Yes, we can start off with a bang. And I understand that I am somebody that always hypes up Missouri. I'm going to do it again. I'm okay with doing it again. Missouri is losing a lot offensively. They're losing Luther Burden. They're losing Theo Wees, Armand Membo, who's going to be a top 15 pick. They're losing their quarterback and Brady Cook. Both running backs are gone. It's a little bit of a reset. And I can understand for those of you out there that believe Missouri back-to-back 10-win seasons, it's an outlier so far. And the jury is still out on where Eli Drinkwitz ranks among coaches in the SEC. I get it. I do. But sometimes you look at the offensive numbers and say, what if this team was missing that spark last year? So what if Brady Cook wasn't playing fully healthy throughout the entire season? I'll spare you the trouble. He wasn't. What if Luther Burden wasn't playing fully healthy last season? I'll spare you the trouble. He wasn't. They also were missing multiple players when it came to the defensive side early on. They never have had a full-fledged offensive identity. And so what they do, they stockpiled. They went out and they brought in the right names in the portal. Names that I am very high on. Kevin Coleman, one of the more slept-on wide receivers in college football last year. Over 900 receiving yards on a bad Mississippi State offense. Now he's your number one, and I think that he can do wonders in the slot. I think he can be that gadget-type player. If he wears the number 3, you're going to see, I think, the version of Luther Burden that we want to see last year. You had a really good recruiting class. Obagole, I know I said the name wrong, is going to have an opportunity to be a great number 2 receiver and the eventual long-term heir to what Luther Burden was supposed to be. I like what they've added in on the offensive line, and I love the running back room more specifically. Ahmad Hardy was phenomenal as a freshman last year. And some people will say, well, look at the level of competition that he played against. You rushed for over 1,300 yards as a freshman and average over 7 yards a play and over 98 yards a game. I don't care what school you play at. I don't care what division you play at. And I don't care what conference you're in. You are good enough to be in the SEC. And more importantly, you are good enough to be my lead back. So I got him back. I also got a very good returning veteran in Brett Norfleet, 6'7" tight end. I got some wide receivers that I got to turn to and hopefully can trust. And the best part is, I still have my defensive identity. Some of the names that they have brought in, and you talk to people around Columbia, they are very, very excited about. I'll tell you one right now. Trotter, the linebacker from West Virginia, kid was supposed to be, kid last year was an all-freshman Big 12, 80 tackles, was already gaining the respect in the clubhouse. Very well-liked leader in Morgantown. He comes on in, and now he's replacing Corey Flagg long-term. That's a dude that you want to keep holding on to. Georgia, we get the Georgia transfer coming on in. Arguably one of the better pass rushers that was on the market this past season. I think he had 6 sacks last year. Imagine him now replacing what you're losing on the edge in that buck position. How are you not excited about that? Corey Batoon, one of the more underappreciated defensive coordinators last season, replacing Blake Baker. This was a top 40 unit in almost every single level. You don't lose Toriano Pride. I think you can have a really good year in the secondary for you. I also really like what you have a defensive tackle returning in McClendon. So I look at them and I say, okay, but Cole, why are you still trying to sell me on Missouri? Because again, it's Missouri. We know what they're going to do. Have you seen their schedule? Oh, you haven't? Okay, well, let me just remind you. They start off the year with 6 straight home games. They do not leave Farote Field until October 18th. Do you understand that for a young quarterback like Bo Pabula, who's trying to get comfortable, trying to get acclimated to the system, for a young running back like Ahmad Hardy to get more advertised and feel like that he's taking the necessary steps forward, being at home for that long of a stretch, that gives you time to build that rapport because you don't have to worry about the stresses of playing inside of a hostile environment like Kyle Field or going to Bryant-Denny Stadium on a Saturday evening or traveling to Columbia, South Carolina. You're welcoming those teams into you. And a lot of them you're welcoming in pretty early on in the year to where you can kind of stack up those wins, feel really good about the direction of your team, and then be able to say, hey, we're taking that next step forward. Same schedule as last year. Easy out of conference schedule. On top of all of that, you also throw in the fact that they were a game away last season from going 10-2, and they were the forgot about 9-3 team in the SEC because everyone was just so focused in on how terrible their offense was at times. What if their offense is averaging top 25 in scoring? What if their run game is top 25 in rushing? What if they're averaging 60% of his scoring efficiency inside the red zone? And now we're talking about Bo Pabula. Very mobile quarterback. Go turn on his tape against Wisconsin last year. It was awesome to watch him move on the ground for Penn State. Imagine we see that version, and he gets better as a passer. And the relationship and the rapport in the passing game is second to none. And here comes Missouri, and we're going into the final weekend when they play for the Battle Line Trophy against Arkansas, and they're at 9-2, or better yet, they're at 10-1, and now they're a sleeper to go to Atlanta. And then people are going to say, well, it's Missouri. We can't trust them. Well, we couldn't trust Indiana either, and somehow the committee said, 12-team playoff, they were 11-1, we're putting them in. That could be the case for the Tigers. I know that people don't want to give Missouri its credit, and I understand there's a lot of people out there that think that Missouri doesn't belong in the SEC, and I'm not going to argue with you when it comes to those little things because you want to know why? If you're good enough to play in the SEC year in and year out the way that you have, I'm going to give you credit where credit's due. And I know that I hype up Missouri way too much, but with your schedule being at home, first 6 games of the year, for you to establish a young quarterback's identity, you still having the same schedule but only flipped, you welcome in the 3 teams that you lost to your backyard. You don't know what you're going to get in Auburn. You don't know what you're going to get in Oklahoma. And you don't know what you're going to get in yourself, which also is a blessing and a wonder in disguise. How does that not make you excited if you are a Tiger going into the summer workouts, going into fall camp? And then week 1 rolls around, and what if Bo Pabula breaks on out? And it's the show that you have been dying to see. And he lives up to all your expectations of the offseason. And now we're talking about this Missouri squad. They have a number attached to their name, and they're not going to let that go so easily. I know it's just in the month of March. I know we haven't even gotten to spring football just yet. I'm telling you, something about Missouri, we got to stop sleeping on them. You can go ahead and do that all you want. But if you look at FanDuel's lines, you look at the early odds for what to expect. I am not doubting this Missouri team at all. They come in at plus. The over-under is set at 7.5 wins, hammering the over as of this point. And I may be throwing down way more money than my wife is actually going to be okay with. We got a fun show planned for Thursday. It is the Mailbag Show. Dave Shumate is expected to be back. So make sure that you are locked in by hitting subscribe, hit the ring notification, and make sure that also you download the podcast for the show. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Make sure you're following me at Mr. Cole Thompson. That way the back and forth banner can go ahead and continue. Make sure that you check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. For Cole Thompson, I am Cole Thompson. Why did I even say that? For Dave Shumate, for Harrison Fant, for Chris Phillips, I am Cole Thompson. Have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. If you are going out, please make sure that you drink responsibly. And also, just remember, you only live life once. Do it fun and to its fullest. Bye.